It is an honor to welcome all of you here today, students, staff, and community members, to the Mississinewa Community Schools Civil Rights Commemoration. Today, we come together to reflect on the importance of equality, justice, and the ongoing journey toward a world where everyone is treated with respect and dignity. This event is not only a time to celebrate the progress we've made, but also to remind ourselves of the work that still lies ahead. As we listen to performances and speeches today, let's remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who once said, "Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?" These words remind us that we all have a responsibility to make the world a better place for everyone, no matter our age, background, or where we come from. Now, as we begin, I would like to take a moment to remind everyone to be respectful and considerate. We're so fortunate to have students and speakers here today who have worked hard to prepare, and it is important that we give them our full attention. Please be sure to listen quietly, show appreciation with applause, and refrain from talking or moving around during the performances and speeches. At this time, could everyone please stand if you are able? Mississinewa High School students Kyson Mahoney and Jonah Richards will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing for the national anthem.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic where it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We cannot talk about America without talking about Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. America simply would not look the same without his efforts towards equality and against racism, poverty, and violence. He fought for justice and equality for all people, all around the world, like so many civil rights heroes did before him. He lived to combat hatred with love and understanding, an understanding of empathy and cultural change in America for the marginalized and the disenfranchised, to bring hope and change to those who lived under racial apartheid. These are the very ideals we strive to uphold even today. freedom, equality, hope, joy, love, peace, patience, kindness, goodness. How then do we reflect on these things? We must create the margin and slow down to ask ourselves, when I look into the face of my neighbor, will I choose to see these things? When I see myself in the mirror, will I be a reflection of these ideals today? This is how we remember Dr. King. By how we live our lives, by how we treat one another, by how we treat ourselves. How will you remember this MLK Day?
At this time, I would like to invite 5th grade Northview student Corbin Majors Brooks to read his winning essay.
Imagine being arrested and facing significant violence for the rights of your people. Would you stop? John Lewis didn't. John Lewis was born on February 21st, 1940, near Troy, Alabama. Unfortunately, during this time, not everyone was treated equally. One huge experience John Lewis encountered with racism was when he was denied enrollment at Troy University because of the color of his skin. Although upset about the news, he chose not to give up, and instead, he decided to continue his education at a small, historically black college in Tennessee. His degree of philosophy and religion led him to be a civil rights leader, where he helped organize many important moments in history, including the Freedom Rides. As a young adult, John Lewis had role models such as Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. In 1963, at the age of 23, John Lewis attended the March on Washington and was given the privilege of speaking right before Martin Luther King Jr. In 1965, he led them more than 600 peaceful protesters across a bridge in Selma, Alabama. The protesters were attacked by law officers, and more than 50 people, including Lewis, were hospitalized. That day, now known as Bloody Sunday. This event helped pass the Voting Rights Act, which stopped the many ways used to prevent African Americans from voting. Throughout all this violence and injustice, he woke up every morning hoping to make the world a better and a more even place for everyone. With that in mind, he ran for and he was elected in 1986 to the United States House of Representatives and served 17 terms. As John Lewis once said, when you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, you have to speak up. You have to say something. You have to do something. John Lewis did just that. He did whatever it took to give everyone the equal rights they have today. Thank you.
This little light of mine The civil rights movement has many heroes, but years before the 1960s, we can look back and see that all the heroes along the way that made the civil rights movement possible. Harriet Tubman is one of those heroes. She is famous for saying, "If you hear the dogs, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after you, keep going." This highlights her unwavering determination to fight for freedom while leading enslaved people to safety on the Underground Railroad. Harriet Tubman once said, "Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for stars, to change the world." The Drinking Gourd is a traditional Underground Railroad map song that directs these escaping slaves to go north from Mobile, Alabama to cross the Ohio River to freedom. This title is a code name for the Big Dipper constellation, pointing to the North Star Polaris and to freedom. Naming this map song the Drinking Gourd was a clever way to disguise this real purpose, because a hollowed-out gourd was used by slaves as a water dipper. The Old Miss singers will now sing the Drinking Gourd.
I will now introduce the MHS Essay Contest winner, Emma Houston.
Rosa Parks is often remembered as a pivotal figure in the civil rights movement, a woman whose simple act of defiance changed the course of history. In 1955, Parks refused to give up her seat to a white passenger on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama. This act became one of the most iconic moments in the struggle for racial equality in America, but her significance extends beyond that single act. Rosa Parks' courage was a spark for a movement, and her legacy continues to inspire and influence the fight for racial justice today. During the 1900s, the United States was very segregated. Laws in the South enforced a system of racial discrimination that restricted Black people's rights. The struggle for civil rights was ongoing, but there were a few victories. Parks' refusal to give up her seat on a bus was not just an isolated act of rebellion. It was a direct challenge to this oppressive system. Parks had already been active in the civil rights community, and her personal integrity made her act to challenge the law. Her arrest was what started the Montgomery bus boycott, which eventually led to a Supreme Court ruling that declared segregation on public buses unconstitutional. The significance of Rosa Parks' actions during the 1950s cannot be overstated. Her personal act was a powerful symbol that helped start the civil rights movement and demonstrated how individual acts of courage could lead to action. Her refusal to give up her seat was not an act of personal rebellion. It was a challenge to a system that oppressed Black people in every corner of American society. It provided momentum for the larger movement that would lead to the end of segregation in schools, public facilities, and other areas of life. Rosa Parks' legacy is not only in the past. The struggles she fought against are far from over. Parks' legacy serves as a guide for today's activists, showing that even in the face of oppression, individual acts of courage can serve as powerful tools for change. Her story reminds us that the fight for justice requires action, even in the most difficult of circumstances. Rosa Parks' influence is seen in how the values of the civil rights movement are woven into today's conversations about justice. Her focus on powerful, nonviolent resistance continues to serve as a model for those who fight for justice today. Rosa Parks' bravery mattered then, and it still matters now, as her example continues to guide and inspire those working toward a more just and equal society. This next song, to be performed by the Crimson Choir, is a tribute to Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. It vividly depicts his "I've been to the mountaintop" speech given the day before he was assassinated, in which he said, "I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land."
Sometimes I feel like I've never been here, and I'll be walking till the day I expire. Sometimes I lay down, no more can I do. But then I go on again.
We Won't Give Up is a song of perseverance, strength, and dedication. Martin Luther King Jr. once proclaimed.
Commit yourself to noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in. He was not speaking of equal rights based on one's race or the color of one's skin, but equal rights for all, no matter their religion, sex, or national origin. The Civil Rights Movement led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which led to other laws, like the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which prohibited racial discrimination in the voting. The Civil Rights Act of 1968 which prevented discrimination in access of housing, and even more recently, the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 that prohibited the discrimination of individuals with disabilities.
The choirs will now sing We Won't Give Up, a true anthem of hope for the future.
We won't give up. The hope will live on. We've come too far.
In his 1964 Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke these words: "I believe that unarmed truth and unconditional love will have the final word in reality. I believe that even amid today's mortar bursts and whining bullets, there is still hope for a brighter tomorrow. I have the audacity to believe that peoples everywhere can have 3 meals a day for their bodies, education and culture for their minds, and dignity, equality, and freedom for their spirits. I believe that what self-centered men have torn down, men other-centered can build up. And the lion and the lamb shall lie down together, and every man shall sit under his own vine and fig tree, and none shall be afraid. I still believe that we shall overcome. We Shall Overcome, a gospel song that became the anthem of the U.S. Civil Rights Movement, has been sung at rallies, festivals, concerts, and protests since the 1960s. The most famous performance was when 50,000 people sang it as a symbol of unity at the funeral of Martin Luther King Jr. The MHS band will now play We Shall Overcome.
last year, on July 1st, President Biden made a proclamation commemorating the 60th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act. The following is an excerpt from that proclamation. 60 years ago, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed into law one of the most significant pieces of civil rights legislation in history, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. It prohibited discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin. That day, our nation moved closer to our North Star, the founding ideal of America. We are all created equal and deserve to be treated equally throughout our lives. We have never fully lived up to that idea, but we've never walked away from it either. On this anniversary, we promise we will not walk away from it now. On July 2nd, 1964, when President Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act, a crowd gathered behind him. Among them were some of the black leaders and activists who had led the movement that made it possible. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., A. Philip Randolph, Dr. Dorothy Height, and others who had fought, protested, and prayed for the movement. It was the work of change makers like them, from the countless protests, sit-ins, and marches they organized, to the many speeches and sermons they gave, and the courageous activism and participation of everyday Americans that brought the bill to President Johnson's desk. It was an answer to President Kennedy's call for national action to guarantee the equal treatment of every American, regardless of skin color. Change only rippled out from there. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 helped set the foundation for other critical legislation like the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The legacies of those activists and extraordinary Americans have had a profound impact. Their efforts made us fundamentally better as Americans, opening the doors of opportunity wider and bringing our nation closer to its promise of liberty, equality, and justice for all. Despite this critical step forward, securing our civil rights remains the unfinished fight of our time. On this anniversary, may we recommit to continuing the work that the Civil Rights Act began 6 decades ago. It's still the task of our time to build a democracy where every American is treated with dignity and has an equal opportunity to follow their dreams. We must continue to move forward together, stand with one another, and we must choose to be believers, dreamers, and doers.
Could you please join me in recognizing all of our speakers and performances from this morning? To the students and staff at Westview and Northview Elementaries, you guys did an outstanding job. Give yourselves a round of applause. I do have a couple thank yous to some individuals. Thank you to Mrs. Bree Gowan for helping to organize this event today. Thank you for Mr. Gowan and Chip Boss for running our sound and film today. I would also like to give thanks to our amazing bus drivers for transporting our students to and from the building today. Please give them a round of applause. This concludes our program. Students, please listen to the instructions from your teachers. Everyone have an amazing day.